What's up guys, it's me Jeremy, and now that I'm back in the United States, I'm ready to make some high quality videos again for you guys. Let's start off with the second episode of Pro Team Comps Explained. I learned a lot from the feedback on the last episode, and I'm pleased to present the Hard Engage composition. This is a composition that excels at team fights by being able to force engages extremely easily and decimate team fights, as well as being able to pick off isolated targets easily too. It is designed to start an engage and then have multiple champions follow up on that engage for massive damage and crowd control. This composition is very strong against poke comps due to the natural power of its engages. I actually really like this composition because it's very solid at coming back when behind due to the immense power it has in teamfights, and it doesn't have as much counterplay as other compositions, of which I will go over later of course. Now let's go over the picks and bans. Keep in mind that as I go through my favorite picks for each role, that these top picks are not set in stone, and as long as the pick follows the guidelines given, it should be just fine. In addition, a lot of these picks can be interchanged into other roles and such, so don't feel confined by my choices. For your jungler, you want to play someone who will serve the role as a main initiator, who is the person that goes in and starts the fight. This champion needs to be able to start a fight at range very easily, with either having it be hard to disengage them or have their engage ability be on a low cooldown to where if you do get disengaged on, you can just try again in 10 seconds or so. Champions I like for this jungler pick would be Zac, Sejuani, or Jarvan. For the top laner, you also want to play someone who can be a main initiator. This way, when you have two main initiators, starting fights just becomes absurdly easy. This allows you to still start fights even if one person has their ultimate down or isn't there or whatever, and also creates a phenomenal re-engage for your team. Champions I like for top lane would be Malphite, Rumble, and Kennen. For your mid laner, you want to play someone with a follow-up initiate. This is the person that goes in after the two-man initiators and combos their skills with the actual initiate, creating follow-up CC on the opponents for a solid overall engage. This follow-up initiate is key to the composition because it gives very little room for your opponents to try to kite you out because you force everything on them so fast and so hard. Champions I like for mid lane would be Orianna, Cassiopeia, or Zed. For the support pick, you also want someone with a follow-up initiate. This combo of two main initiators and two follow-up initiators creates a composition that can engage and follow up that engage, or bait the opponents out for a re-engage. You want a support with solid area of effect crowd control that can combo with your initiators. Champions I like for support would be Lulu, Sona, or Leona. Also, buying a Shurelios on your support, or just on your team, is an amazing idea to help the initiates as well. Lastly, we have the AD carry. You actually have quite a bit of freedom for your AD carry pick, but depending on what you want, you have two options. Option 1 is to pick an AD carry with another follow-up initiate such as Ashe, Varus, or Urgot to add even more power to your incredible engage, while option 2 is to go for an AD carry with high sustained DPS that will just sit in the back and hit the opponents throughout the entire engage such as Caitlyn, Vayne, or Draven. I personally prefer the Ashe, Varus, Urgot picks because those AD carries can actually be used as a main initiator as well because they have fairly high range on their ultimates and can pick off targets pretty easily, but the sustained damage carries can work just fine too. Now for the bans, there are only two bans that are necessary, Janna and Jace. Those champions can shut down your engage fairly hard by disengaging, while also kiting you out so you can get poked down to where you can't re-engage. The last ban I leave to you folks watching at home, and it's really just open to whatever your team doesn't want to play against. Now for some tips on playing this composition. During the laning phase, you really kinda just play standard because this comp is all about the team fights anyways. Try not to fall too far behind and do your best to win, but there really isn't anything special to it. During the team fights, you want to have one of your main initiators start the fight, and then have everyone on your team follow them up, while the two carries stay somewhat in the back while still doing damage of course, so that they don't get jumped on when your opponent re-engages when your initiation is over. Also, try to combo your crowd control abilities. If you stack them on top of each other, it won't be nearly as effective as if you were to chain them together for maximum crowd control duration. Remember that this team is fairly heavily based on your ultimates, so try not to fight without them if you don't have to, and wait for them to come up so you can get that massive synergy that this composition is based on. Also, you should try to avoid fighting in the jungle, because you can just get juked in the bushes where you won't be able to properly initiate around all those corners and walls. In the jungle, you can get easily kited, which you need to avoid. Another thing is that picking off targets is actually really easy with this composition. When you use your ultimates very randomly, especially if you're flashing in, people do not expect it, so they get caught out by that crowd control and die, putting you at a huge advantage. Don't be afraid to just randomly ult a single target as long as your team follows you up, because people do not expect the random ultimates, and a lot of times the initiate straight in lane can be kind of obvious and thus avoided. You need to try to be unpredictable and do things like ulting random targets, picking them off, or flanking. For countering hard engage compositions, you want to survive the engage and then kite out the fight. Champions like Janna or Jace are amazing counter picks and can allow you to do this fairly easily. Flash is definitely your most important tool against a hard engage comp. If you can use your flash to dodge initiates, you can be golden to set up a kite on the enemy team. Fighting in the jungle is definitely a good idea because of all of that space to kite around. Just make sure that you have all of the bushes warded, of course. In addition, you need to be ready for engages. Be ready for that flash Malphite ultimate or flash Varus ultimate or whatever, because the hard engage comp will be able to follow that up with their ultimates from everyone, no matter how deep they dive in. In addition, if you do have the team for it, initiating the fight yourself can work fairly well, because it sets up good positioning for your carries. Also, keep track of the ultimate cooldowns on your opponents, as many of them will be very long, and try to fight when they have some of them down, so you can easily survive their engage, if there is one. Overall, the hard engage composition is all about initiating and then following up that initiate with massive crowd control that combos to lock your opponents up and decimate them. Make sure you fight with your ultimates and avoid getting kited by people that can disengage your fight. So that's it for this episode of Pro Team Comps Explained. I'd love it if you could support me with a like or some feedback in the comments, and if you have any questions, you can join me on the North American chat room, Gaming Curios. Please subscribe for more awesome content in the future if you enjoyed this video, and I would love it if you could follow me on Facebook or Twitter, of which I will have links in the description. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.